Hi everybody, welcome to another video. In a recent conference call to discuss its latest quarterly financial results, the game's publisher Take-Two provided some astonishing statistics about Grand Theft Auto V. According to the company's CEO, Strauss Zelnick, the open-world gangster adventure, originally released in 2013, has now sold more than 75 million copies. GTA 5 is a multi-platform, open-world action-adventure computer game developed by RockstarNorth and published by Rockstar Games. The game was originally released for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 game consoles in 2013, re-released for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in 2014, and for Windows PCs in 2015. It is the 15th game in the Grand Theft Auto series and the next major game after Grand Theft Auto the 4th, released in 2008. 5. In Russia and the CIS, the publisher of Grand Theft Auto V is 1 degree centigrade Softclap. Not only that, but NPD Group sales data shows it was the 6th best-selling game across all formats in 2016, 3 years after its release. If you look at the current UK games chart, GTA is at number 2, beaten only by Resident Evil 7, released last month. Why is this happening? There are some obvious reasons. Grand Theft Auto V is the latest title in one of the most successful and acclaimed video game franchises of all time. The game drew hugely positive reviews for its fast, beautiful open-world environment, its engaging narrative, anarchic humor and its many sub-quests, side missions and secrets which added life and longevity to the world. True, there were plenty of concerns about the game's depiction of women, race and violence, but for many gamers, the thrill of exploring this gargantuan landscape with decadence and destruction outweighed any problematic undertones. Shortly after the original release of GTA V, Rockstar launched GTA Online, a shared multiplayer mode, in which players competed against each for cash and kudos, while cruising the streets of Los Santos. After some technical problems, Rockstar succeeded in creating a highly interconnected take on classic online shooter and wordplay forms. There were missions, there were raids, there were crews and customization options. Players could drop in for a few minutes of chaos, or join much more organized gangs for whole weekends of team-based action. The mode is free, but the implementation of in-game microtransactions has meant Rockstar is making money from its 10 million or so monthly active users. Meanwhile, a YouTube community grew up around the game, with skilled players pulling off ever more elaborate stunts to ever larger online audiences, and Rockstar has endorsed and supported this element, sharing videos and collaborating with the key stunt groups via its busy social media presence. The company has also supported GTA Online with regular updates, adding new quests, modes, vehicles, clothes and weapons to keep the novelty factor high. But this is only part of the equation. Like Minecraft, another open-world game that supports and engenders large communities, GTA V has also benefited from the modern digital marketplace, which allows a game to be easily downloaded across multiple platforms. When you purchase a new console, GTA V is just there on the store, tempting fans to download it, and Rockstar made the transition sweeter by offering bonus content to those who transported their PS3 and Xbox 360 saves to a new PS4 or Xbox One download of the game. The studio also refreshed all the textures, added new scenic elements and introduced a first-person shooter mode, effectively creating a whole new visual experience. In essence, GTA V, like Minecraft, like Roblox, like Counter-Strike, has become a place to hang out. It is a venue, rather than a game. Unlike in previous hardware generations, when players simply bought sequels to experience favourite titles again, we are now in an age where single iterations can be endlessly remodeled and re-equipped for successive machines. Los Santos, in this way, behaves like a genuine city, its real estate torn down and remodeled every few years to take advantage of new architectural ideas, new building technologies, new trends and fashions. This all combines with a maturing video game audience. Nowadays, people are playing games into their 40s and 50s, They have the money to buy new hardware, but they may not have the time or desire to seek out fresh gaming experiences. Updated versions of reliable staples are becoming more attractive. Of course, there's always been a nostalgic element to gaming. Right now we are seeing ever greater numbers of Xbox 360 and PS3 titles cropping up on Sony and Microsoft's current machines, while PC gaming site Good Old Games has built a strong business out of making classic titles easily available to new users. But that's not quite what is going on with GTA V. It's about millions of people who have found a broad enough experience that they're just happy to keep having it. What this situation most closely resembles is the endless repackaging and remastering of the music and film industries. For a lot of fans, there are a handful of albums and movies they will keep reviewing on every new platform that comes along. That might mean owning Jaws on videocassette, DVD, Blu-ray and UHD Blu-ray. It might mean having Fleetwood Mac's Rumours on vinyl, cassette, CD, SACD and finally, in a nicely circular consumer journey, 180G virgin vinyl. The point is, there are, in culture, certain titles that become important experiential/audiovisual benchmarks. They're how people test and enjoy new hardware. Grand Theft Auto V is part of the first generation of games that are able, due to the way games are distributed and constantly updated these days, to be a part of that regenerative cultural phenomenon. Perhaps this will be horrifying news for the creative minds at Rockstar North, who no doubt pride themselves on its subversive pretensions, but one reason why GTA V is still being played now is that it's comfortable, it lasts, its components are consistently and reliably thrilling. GTA V is the dad rock of video games. I remember when GTA 3 first launched, the primary selling point for many people was the pleasure of existing within the world of Liberty City. In many ways it seemed like the first step towards Jaron Lanier's dream of true virtual reality. We might not have been strapping awkward cameras to our faces, but we were able to step into a world that felt real by 2001 standards, and realize a lifestyle that we could never emulate. It was the right time for it, I think. Thanks to The Sopranos, people were eating up mob dramas, and the next generation of consoles needed a powerhouse title like this to really show off what games were capable of. The moral panic didn't hurt either. Rockstar are very good at turning bad press into great word of mouth. Cutting to the present, I think that the latest Grand Theft Auto games, 4 and V, are simply strong examples of brilliant game design. On one level, they go really big. Over the last few years there's been more and more of a divide between the independent scene AAA development, with many of the big licenses having failed to stay fresh while the little titles are innovating, which has been really exciting. But there's something about the sheer scale of GTA that you can't help but be won over by. These are immense games, so clearly the result of phenomenally hard work, and exceptionally polished. It's like walking into Bunnings and being awed by how huge and comprehensive Bunnings is, only with fewer gardening supplies and more semi-automatics. But I think the real secret to GTA's success is that taking a stroll down any given street is just as enjoyable as racing through the streets in a stolen limo fending off the cops. Grand Theft Auto breathes. The game world feels like it would still exist, even if you weren't in it, and to simply walk around and watch as the world beats on, to witness the artistry of the game's designers in constant motion, is strangely exciting. Grand Theft Auto first became popular by offering something different, but now it's become something of an event game. You know each release will offer something new yet familiar, that it'll be polished to a shine, that while it may offend or bother you at times it's also going to do its best to delight you at others. Michael Irving, freelance video game journalist. Grand Theft Auto 3 was huge in its time, being the first major game to present an entire city, in 3D, in a non-linear fashion, for a player to just explore at their leisure. It gave an unprecedented sense of freedom. You could theoretically go anywhere and do anything. In GTA V, those options are wider than ever. Sure, you could go on a cop-killing rampage and earn the game its infamous label. That notoriety in the non-gaming community is part of the fun, but really, it's far less blood and guts graphic than many. Yesterday, for instance, I was challenged to a running race along the beach by a jogger. Afterwards, I found a Coney Island-esque wharf carnival, so I rode the Ferris wheel and roller coaster. because it was there, and I could. While plenty of other franchises have adopted and expanded on the open world structure, GTA still feels like the grandfather of it all. The series excels at creating a living city, teeming with things to discover. Its inhabitants go about their business around you, never feeling too mechanical, often responding to your actions in unpredictable ways. The central characters are surprisingly sympathetic, and the tales woven through these sprawling cities are a pleasure to unravel. Then, throw in a healthy dose of social commentary, and it's just a great fun world to exist in. Tim Norman, staff writer, Rocket Chainsaw. I think the reason the GTA series is so popular is because the open world design allows players a lot of freedom to explore and be creative on their own, without necessarily having to stick to the game's main story or side missions. The detail and openness of the world itself really help draw you in and make the game a unique experience for each player. There's also a lot to be said for the power fantasy the game offers, in the sense that most of your character's actions are pretty reprehensible, but the game always makes it seem like you're doing something cool or good. It's a careful balance between making a character who seems capable of doing these things and also a character players are going to want to play as during the game. Chad Sean Habel, editor, Serious Gamer. Okay, there's probably lots of reasons GTA is so popular, as many reasons as there are gamer preferences. The rich open world and do what you like philosophy seems to appeal to lots of people, as well as core driving and shooter mechanics. Locations tend to be rich and evocative, and narratives tend to be fairly entertaining in a veiled linear kind of way. The writing is always distinctive and characterized by crass humor, and the branching mission structure has a nicely constrained sense of choice. However, for my money, people love GTA so much because it is the essence of play. Play is always about boundaries and rules, but crucially, it is often about subverting and transgressing those boundaries. So the world of GTA has a set of boundaries that completely transgress what you're allowed to do in the real world. Carjacking, hold-ups, destroying police choppers with rocket launchers. And players seem to get a huge amount of joyful glee out of this. I'll admit, it's a hell of a lot of fun. Of course, GTA itself has its own boundaries. There are things you can't do, but it's good at covering these up, much like the freedoms of modern society. But it then goes further. There are a number of social and political codes that are subverted in the world of GTA. More and more in the recent games, it's okay to be offensive, antisocial, sexist, and so on. And this freedom has generated a self-entitled community who will put together a petition to sack a reviewer who dares to give the game only 9 and, shock horror, mentions the word misogyny. So people feel part of a community of players who have an entitlement to enjoy this fantasy world where almost anything goes, and it seems to be pretty popular. I think a key thing about gaming is autonomy, and this is really where it's at for GTA's popularity. Players feel that they really can do almost anything they want in this world, which is liberating in a pretty visceral way. Of course, it's an illusion, like most constructions of freedom. Jared Mullison, editor, Rocket Chainsaw, Grand Theft Auto. Generation-defining pop culture is seen through the lens of a strangely grounded, yet brilliantly satirical interactive rendition of modern Western society. No matter the lunacy or chaos, there's always a welcoming familiarity at the core of each game's sprawling metropolis. And perhaps it's this grounding, combined with the freedom to release without restriction no matter how destructive, that has provided fans for over a decade an almost cathartic escapism. GTA is the wild weekend you don't quite remember, middle finger to the man, and reckless indulgence in wealth and pleasure free from the stress, mundanity, and rules of a commonplace life. And deep down, that's something we all deserve, if just for a little while. Josh Whittlington, freelance video game journalist. I think the reason GTA is so popular is because it's so many things to so many people. As a kid, I managed to convince my parents I was mature enough to play San Andreas, but despite all the questionable content in the game that most kids would flock to, I spent more time in the game flying planes and driving trains than anything else. I didn't get into the story missions, or heck, even use a firearm most of the time. Some people love walking around the beautifully constructed worlds and just take in the sights. While at the opposite end of the spectrum there's people who just use cheats to get all the best weapons and go on murderous rampages. GTA provides a huge sandbox with plenty of tools and interacting systems to make your own enjoyments, which is what resonates with people so much. Don't forget to subscribe.